On Christmas Eve 1945, a fire erupted in the Sodder family home in Fayetteville, West Virginia, and burned it to the ground. But that was only the beginning of a mystery that would burn through the Sodder family line to this very day. The Sodder family was a large family consisting of George and Jenny Sodder and 10 children. On Christmas Eve 1945, 9 of the children were in the home. After the family was in bed, the phone rang a little past midnight. Jenny Sodder answered it, and the caller asked for a woman that Jenny had never heard of before. When Mrs. Sodder told the caller that she had the wrong number, the caller laughed and hung up. Before going back to bed, Jenny noticed that the lights were on in the house. Unusual, as the children were very responsible about extinguishing them, but she shrugged off the oversight and went upstairs. She had barely laid down when she reported hearing a thump on the roof and something rolling. A half hour later, she smelled smoke and realized the house was on fire. At 1 a.m., the Sodder home was an inferno. Jenny, George, and 4 of their children managed to escape, but despite efforts by George Sodder to re-enter the house and save them, Maurice, age 14, Martha, age 12, Louis, age 9, Jenny, age 8, and Betty, age 5, were lost in the tragic blaze. By 8 a.m. the next morning, the Sodder home was a pile of ashes. The remaining Sodder family was told that the fire, thought to be caused by faulty wiring, was so hot that the bodies of the children were likely cremated. George covered the basement with 5 feet of dirt and planted flowers as a memorial to his lost children. As the days wore on, the Sodder family began to stitch together the strange events of the months, weeks, and days leading up to the deadly fire, suspicious that the fire had been no accident. An insurance salesman had, for example, warned them days earlier that their home would burn to the ground due to wiring, and seemed to get angry at some negative remarks George had made against Italian fascist leader Benito Mussolini. The children had reported being followed by a man days before the fire. A ladder that was owned by the family was found down an embankment. Neighbors reported that they had seen fireballs being tossed at the house. Sometime later, a telephone repairman told them that the phone lines to their home had been cut, not burned. Strange, since they received a phone call only a half an hour before they noticed the smoke. They also realized that if the fire had been the fault of wiring, the lights in the home would not have been functioning. Soon, the family learned that to completely burn a human body to ashes, it would have to be exposed to a temperature of 2,000 degrees for 2 hours. The home had burned down in only 45 minutes. And then, amazingly, a witness stepped forward claiming that she had seen the 5 lost Sodder children peering at her from a passing car as the fire was in progress. A waitress in a tourist shop between Fayetteville and Charleston claimed that she had served the children breakfast. A woman at a Charleston hotel, after seeing the children's photos in a newspaper, recalled that she had seen 4 of the 5 a week before the fire. She said that the children were with 2 men and 2 women, and that the men spoke with Italian accents. Both were reported as hostile and refused to allow anyone to speak to the children. George and Jenny Sodder pleaded with the FBI and local authorities to reopen the case, but were met with bureaucracy and a strange conspiracy of silence from the local fire and police chief. Not to be dissuaded, the parents erected a billboard on Route 16 displaying the pictures of their missing children, pleading with the local authorities to investigate. It stood in that spot almost 40 years. In 1968, more than 20 years after the fire, Jenny went to get the mail and found an envelope addressed only to her. It was postmarked in Kentucky but had no return address. Inside was the photo of a man in his mid-20s. On its flip side, a cryptic handwritten note said, "Louis Sodder, I love brother Frankie, little boys, A90132 or 35. The resemblance to their son Louis was, in the family's opinion, very striking, and they hired a private detective to track down the man that they believed to be their son. But they never heard from that man again. The strange message on the back of the photo has never been decrypted. There were a number of theories. Some postulate that the children were kidnapped by someone they knew, the fire covering their tracks. Others have said that they were taken away by orphanages and were sold to wealthy couples who couldn't have children of their own. Some suggest that George and Jenny Sodder might have been the culprits, while others point the finger at the dwindling war overseas. George himself was an Italian immigrant and had been warned by an insurance salesman that the house would be burned because of his negative remarks about Mussolini. George Sodder died in 1969. Jenny passed away in 1989, and upon her death, the faded and weather-worn billboard bearing the pictures of their children, now amended with the grown-up picture of Louis, was finally taken down. Sylvia Sodder Paxton, the youngest and last surviving member of the Sodder children, told the Gazette-Mail in 2013 that the night of the fire was her earliest memory, and that she and her father would often stay up late talking about what had happened and what might have happened. She experienced her parents' grief for a long time and assisted with efforts to find her missing siblings and continued to publicize the case, honoring a promise to her family and herself until her death in 2021. Although the Sodder children will never be reunited in life, Sylvia's daughter said in a 2006 interview with the Beakley Register-Herald that she had made a promise to her grandparents that she would not let the story of her missing aunts and uncles die, ensuring that their memories will live on to a new generation, one where their disappearance may one day finally be solved.